Kaya yung sa tinil dekat Yuhan. Ya kaya wish kanach da adi. Ya iti asandek ak shukat ku yagi ya kuhi klay yagi. Wish kanach da ad. Ya klay nacha awe hakuni hakani. Ha ide aya a guchlatu a dat awe wuch in tutla ani. Ye awe a kanach ye jagachtu A iti asan dechak dech yagig wush kanachkach tu da kleik yagi wush kanachkach tu da kun yagi like Aga achtuasagu dat yuch agach tu laadi ya has skoon ye jinéiyi ach kak ye ya o kain skoon atwe chatsu skoon stuch siewe chwach skoon chwahet wasauti A kat'óotʼ aayí aya ye awe kach shechit syllabus kach kleinach ka du jid kach gishachit we chuk a kach klech ach ach kisa wu dis keinach kach gitu yach a ka awe we hóoch'i ye jinéiyi a kach ginig Lingít chenach aadé awe dleid chach chenach wush de seichen ye gach tusen e ḳu.aa ye jinéiyi A kat'óotʼ aayí kach ginig Guksa ḳu.aa Gleit kach enach yi ide kakwanikzu. Yadua icht ide kach intermediate Tlingit Yag aya a kat'óotʼ ye jinéiyi Yag Gwashi sitin yadayach Gusu we gleit kach enach ḳu.aa Kach gishahid Tleinach ḳu.aa Tleinach Tleich wujin Aga was dech sandech akanach just tleinach ye jigach gini. Aga awe wuch in ye jigach tunel de kat'óotʼ. Jigach tu tlach. Was dasa aya ye tich tlechach tuwa ashku a datawe etut wuhihi. Ga gakwati. Heshwasa gakwati. Aga awe we hóoch'i ye jinéiyi Tleika chuch kach gishachit. Adusa dujide etuati ye gakwati. Aga awe we hóoch'i aayí gwashi ide kakwani kada yata. Guksa ach zoom ay. Basecamp you do a sak yata. Achtuasagu agachi aku an aayí iti. We yuchatangyan shuka. Gwashi awe ye gachtu sa. Ya kawe aayí yadu. Wuchin chagach sati. Yata kayata ka iye jinéiyi data gwasyata aya kach shachit. Gwas wujini tuasagu yuch ayil atki ya kaya kakakwati. Ya jaguta zoom itik kudzititsu gwashi tuasagu wujini jinéiyi wujini yuch ayil atki zoom tunach akade kach gishahid. Ya du like guksa. Ya du. Zoom kachea kakwashahid yichiyis. Like kachinach ide kakwanik ya yidat. Gynnes chi shuhan ik echa. Okay. Recap. I'm glad we're all together. I'm glad we're working together. It's good stuff. I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel comfortable. It's okay. You're okay. Everything will be okay as far as your work here. I never want anybody to stress about language learning. For our midterm, I think on the syllabus I said writing a letter, and then for the final doing a translation exercise. I'm proposing we trade those. We'll trade them. So your midterm will be a translation project. So take the next 2 weeks and give it a shot. So it is on our class webpage. So you go down, a whole bunch of resources, and then you get down to the actual class. It does have some other information. We haven't done this sign-up sheet yet. We'll probably will, but we'll see. Just having chances to lead activities with the content that we're studying. But then if you go down here, there is Midterm Project One. So this is the thing. So it's in Pages and Word, a PDF. Pages or Word are probably the easiest to work in. And just start giving it a shot, right? And don't work together yet. And I'm not saying never work together, right? I do. I just want to recognize sometimes people do get they get uncomfortable. One time we were doing an exercise at a language camp, and there was someone who kept going to the elders and getting the answers, which was great, but I wanted them to like try it themselves first and then get it verified by the speakers. So I talked to that person. I said, hey, don't go talk to them and get the answers. Get into the books and put it together yourself, and then go get help from them. And they got really upset, and they kind of interpret it as me saying, don't go talk to the elders. But I'm saying, don't go and get the answers because we're trying to sort of build this thing up. So that's the goal here. It's not to like make you feel like you're on an island, but just see what you can do for the next 2 weeks. Then we'll come together and we'll go over the whole thing, right? No pressure, no worries, no grade is attached to this. You just do the thing, and then we do the thing together, and it's fun, and we all succeed. Your final is a letter, a one-page letter, at least one page, that you write to the person of your choice. You don't have to send it. We will read it, and for that one, since the midterm is like not anything associated with the grade, we'll just do it together, and we'll just sort of walk through line by line and get them all hammered out. For the final, that class will not be recorded, so it's a one-time thing because people tend to share sensitive information sometimes, writing to relatives that they wish they could talk to, writing to future generations, writing to siblings, and it could get emotional at times, and there's also sometimes pressure with sort of coming up with things to say to people. So that one's not recorded, but we will share it during finals week. That's how we're going to wrap everything up for the semester. Any concerns, questions, thoughts about that?
Going to choose for including pages.
Yep.
You said it was 1 page or 2 pages?
At least 1 page for your letter. Single space, 12-point font. Huh?
Where's it at again?
Well, I'm
Which one?
like to find the midterm project.
Oh, okay. Tlingitlanguage.com, learning Tlingit, intermediate Tlingit.
Okay.
This is where you'll always find our recordings, handouts. So if you go here to the last class, you can see, oops. So here's our opposite slideshow. Here's notes from the class. Here's the chat. It sort of talks about what kinds of things we covered. Here's where you can review the class. And I also have, so because so next week we're meeting on Monday and Tuesday next week. So we're meeting on Indigenous Peoples Day, and we're having a presentation about lateral kindness, which I think will be great. Then we'll meet on Tuesday. And my hope is you can have like a very short response to the presenter in Tlingit. Just say like one sentence or so.
Sometime on Tuesday.
On Monday, after the thing.
Okay.
If you can't make it here, also that's totally fine.
No, but just to be clear on expectations, to listen to the presenter and then quickly come up with like a very short, like one sentence.
Just one sentence, yeah. It doesn't have to be like it's no speech of your life type of moment.
Just being clear.
But I think for Tuesday, what I would like you to bring, and I'll make a note, so also what I'll do, I'm trying to get into this new habit of, so this will say, dis Tlein, tle dushu, dech tausend, kat'óotʼ kadech. Then I'll go under here and you'll see the things that we've covered. You'll see handouts. Then underneath here, or maybe above, can't remember what order I like to put these in, you'll see something that says assignment. So your assignment for Tuesday is to tell us in Tlingit 4 things about yourself. Tell us 4 things about yourself. That's how we'll start class on Tuesday. So it's not even me. And I think we'll do either one of 2 things. We'll either do ḳu.aa, kayani, the exploding plant, popcorn. So you call on someone else when you're done, or we just have a sign-in sheet. Or else we just have these long silences. Everybody okay?
Just writing it down before I forget. Just writing it down before I forget.
No, I do that all the time too. Because then the next week come and people are like, what were we supposed to do? I'm like, I don't know. What did I say? So now,
Renee,
system. Yeah.
are we meeting Monday at the same time?
Yes.
Is there a super smash?
It's a super smash. So it's you're going to do it in October, got to do it on Indigenous Peoples Day. Although, I don't know if the boss ever watches this, but next year on Indigenous Peoples Day, the Indigenous faculty should just have like hammocks and room service. It would be like, everybody do the Indigenous Peoples Day stuff because we are tired, but it's okay.
I'll second that motion.
Big palm fronds to fan you with.
That's right. That's right. Cedar mats woven for us to walk upon.
Okay.
Okay. Any language questions, things on your mind before we get started?
Yeah, you said when you were greeting us, good. Did you say good dag ḳu.aa? It sounded like ʻaayí, but with a different thing on the front of it.
Oh, maybe. So there are a couple of things that you could put with that can pair with kuda, kind of on the regular. So let me share some of those that I might think about. And these are actually, this is good timing to go over this stuff because to be conversational or to tell short stories, which is a big part of conversation, like, hey, let me tell you what happened to me today, or let me tell you what I saw today. So we do have this ḳu.aa. So a couple things to keep in mind is ḳu.aa shouldn't be the first thing in a sentence. It likes to sort of bounce off of something. You could say ʼaayí to start a sentence, right? But usually, sometimes, like the way this thing works is if you have someone's name or if you have an independent pronoun, and then you say ḳu.aa, then you're sort of directing the conversation or the question or the topic towards a person, right? And it could be whatever the thing is, right? So I could say ḳu.aa ksati ya akhyedi ḳu.aa ya atneskuini. I'm a teacher. My child, however, is a student, right? So I could say stuff like that. So sometimes it just shifts the focus to a person. So I guess we'll say shift focus to a person. Now, if you can sort of have some things, and you could say aadáx ḳu.aa, which I guess maybe, let me back up for a second. So these are 2 ways to sort of carry, because I think it's important to be able to link thoughts together as you learn a language, right? Just simple things like, and then this, and after that this, and because of that this. So I'm going to show you these 3 things that are very commonly used and are slightly different. I'm thinking of more as I go along. And they all tend to have a we in them. right? Has anybody heard any of these or have any predictions on what any of these might be?
Actually, because.
Yeah, because of that. Or that is why, which are kind of the same thing. So this works really well for sort of being just like, that's why we claimed this thing, that's why we moved here, that's why this thing happened. It's used in a whole bunch of stories, like that's why the bark looks like this, and that's why Raven's footprint is over here.
Adachoy from that thing or from that
Yes, so it means from that time, right? So we're usually talking here about either sequence or cause and effect. So there are ways to sort of move from one thing to the next thing. And adachootʼ is saying like, there's this continuation that's going on here, right? So like, I mean, it literally means from and from that, right? And from that. And so this is like, sometimes it'd be like, okay, they went to the store and forgot their wallet. And then from that, they went to this, so it really is tying some things together, right? Or it's saying like, this thing happened, then this thing happened, then this thing happened, which is very similar to this one underneath it, ʼitach, which is, anybody know ʼitach or it or itch? Following that. So now this one is pretty much sort of like a time sequence, right? So if you had to tell a story and say like, they got this comb, and then they got this rope, and then they got this rock. And it was important for whatever reason to talk about the order that they got them in. Or like, I don't know, like Frodo's going to the whatever, does the whatever, right? So he gets the ring, and then he does the whatever. Can't remember what they did. The movie's too long. And there's a video clip out there that says every line of a non-white character. Just watch it. But I did love it when it came out. I just don't know if I could watch it these days. Okay, sorry. That gets us to. I didn't mean to fight with the token lovers. Okay. Away.
No, the books are long.
And then. Away. And then. I do think they had the most complex, perhaps, language in Star Wars. Is that right? When they sort of invent a language, maybe Star Trek. Okay. Anyway, away, and then. So this one is used usually to, I guess you could say, make a scene or time jump, right? So if you're telling a story, and then and then we're just sort of moving along in the story. This is how we sort of do that, like away. It's not specifically tying like sequence or cause and effect types of things. It is the most common way to move something forward. And I guess there is one more. I should put these in tables, but whatever. And then wa, ani, sowe, which looks kind of like a question, doesn't it? And then this is at some point. So at away just sort of moves it along. Wa nani sowe certainly implies like this is much later. We have jumped ahead, way ahead in the story. Sometimes you have to do. Okay. Sheesh. And so I probably use these quite a bit. And then you can also say adachootʼ. And so adachootʼ, and then, so when you start using ḳu'aa to bridge two statements together, so you'll have a statement, and then you'll have another statement. Now the ḳu'aa usually works a little bit more like although. But it's not always like it's not like the logic is going against the last thing you just said, right? So for example, you could say, I'm from inside the Raven House, but my name is from Dry Bay. So you could say stuff like that. So the ḳu.aa is sort of saying there's extra information that sort of doesn't always align with the first information. And this is a little bit different than this one, which is ʼaayí. And you can also say ʼaayí ḳu.aa, right? Or ʼaayí aadáx. And now you're saying, despite this. And the neatest sentence I ever heard with this, let me try to remember it. Yakunage jayiku genka hastujin. Jaan kwa has kutziti. Ajoe an has awachai. So let me, Yakunage. Did I get their name right? No, Gunaye. Gunaye. And anybody know what that is? Because I will give you that. It's an inland animal. It does not exist on the coast. But it has a cousin that does. Kat'óotʼ yacheti.
Is it a chipmunk?
It is a chipmunk. So gunaye, gunaye. Let's say tlach ye gugank has do jin on ḳu.aa has kutziti ach away on has acha. There. Gunaye kach ye gugank has do jin on ḳu.aa has kutziti ach away on has acha. Any parts we recognize from that? Yeah, because, that is why, or because.
Cooking.
Got very small hands.
Yeah, they have very small hands. Despite this, though, has kutziti. They exist because on hasacha. On is a contraction of aayí. Despite this, they exist because they eat with them. It's such a cute. It was like this amazing speaker named Tlein, and we're coming up with like, here was the exercise. We might try this at some point this semester. Even like crossing the Zoom universe. So I was teaching in Carcross, and someone brought a hockey bag, which is very appropriate for the area, full of stuffed animals that were all local. So no horses, no cows, no pigs, no sheep. All things that you would find out on the land. It was very exciting to have this bag of animals, and we did a lot of stuff with them. So I started thinking, well, everybody knows these names, but like, somebody name an animal. In Tlingit. Okay. Can anybody describe this to me? You can say eshk, right? So what I found was like people could name stuff a whole lot. But then I was like, well, could you tell me what it looks like? Could you tell me what it does? Could you tell me what behavioral things, cultural information? So then we thought of this exercise. Everybody broke into groups. This was probably 10 years ago. We had 10 fluent speakers, high fluency speakers, elders who were there with us. So we all divided into groups. We sent someone up to the hockey bag and we said, pick an animal. Don't let anybody see what you got. Hide it. Go back in your group, write 4 descriptive sentences of this animal. And you're trying to make us guess what you got. But pick kind of obscure things to start. So if you got a beaver, you don't say it's got these 2 big teeth, right? Start with something different. Leave the tail and teeth for like the last 2 sentences. And it was really fun. And so during, someone had jinéiyi, someone had the, I think it's also called ḳu.aa. Someone had the chipmunk. And this was, and she was a wonderful speaker, and it was Shagun Sophie Smarch. But she was a master storyteller. It's like every sentence she had was like, I was like, these are like 4 sentences. I was like, but she was just like, go on, and they're writing down every word she said. It was great. So ʼadáx is it's a harder term, right? So despite this, right? So this is where you are sort of, like ḳu.aa could be like, yeah, and then this other thing kind of a little bit different. But this is like, I had no money, but I still went to the store, right? Or whatever the thing is. Like things are kind of in disagreement when you put this one in there. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, so the other day I was trying to remember how to say candy, and somebody told me the word for what they think was candy, and then I looked up another version of it, and I think there was like three versions of candy that I think I came up with, and I don't know now which one, or maybe they're all correct. I don't know, but let's see it. So núkts is, somebody said núkts is the way to say candy, and then ʼaduwóosʼ was another version that I found, and then I found a recording of Anita Lafferty and her sister, and they were talking about candy, and they said hóoch'i, and they would save up their money and then go buy some hóoch'i at the store, and then in the bottom it said candy, like in the description of what they said. And so it was one of the ones I think that UAS did, where they just sat and had conversations about just whatever, that just kind of any kind of thing that came to their mind, And they were talking about old days and stuff, and they said, we used to work for money and we'd get little bits, and then we'd run and get some hóoch'i at the store, and they said, it's candy. We used to call it candy hóoch'i. And so anyway, that's another version that I don't know if it means anything or fits anything, but anyway, the other ones though is la núkts and then núkts. So what is your take on candy, or what can you add to that? Or even if you never heard of anything about hóoch'i?
I don't remember hearing anything about that. I can ask maybe Florence about it. My guess would be that it comes from either like some Chinook jargon type of thing that came up, or there's some brand name or type of candy that they just took the name for, right? So núkts is a verb root, and the verb root means sweet. So the verb itself is tlingit. So tlingit is something that is sweet, like it has a sweetness to it. So this is what we call a state verb, which is for something to be a certain way, right? And we're going to take a look at some of this stuff at some point. I guess for starters, there are 5 types of Tlingit verbs. There's a state. Anybody know any others? Motion. act, event, position. You will get to know this. It's okay. It's always okay if you don't know, because we start talking about more and more and more stuff. But with a lot of state verbs, you can put a suffix on here to turn it into an adjective. That's what it does, right? So an adjective modifies a noun. So then you can have núkts. So núkts would mean a sweet thing. So there's ʼaduwóosʼ, a sweet thing. You can also have ʼaduwóosʼ. So yeah, that would be cake, or we're like teasing with the group. I was like, we need to lay out all the sweets then, and give them all names and try them all, because there's all kinds of stuff, right? In the scope and sequence for the Juneau School District, they list núkts as candy or sweets. So I'd probably go with that. But I have heard people say ʼaduwóosʼ, but that could just be generically a sweet thing. I'm just looking for a sweet thing. But I think either of them. I think this is sweets and sweet thing. So I don't think, so usually when we come up with names for things. A lot of times we'll sort of figure out, like, are people using a name already? Is it something that they just pulled from English, like wink? So sometimes there's debates about this stuff, right? So where does wink come from? Anybody know? Another name for it is wasus.
Milk.
Honey. Yeah, it comes from milk, right? On the coast, there's no M, so it becomes a W. There's also no L, so it becomes an N. This is like Tlingish sound substitutions. We got a whole worksheet for it. P becomes a GW. F also usually becomes a G, I think an XW. So then sometimes we'll say, okay, well, is there a name for it that people have been using? And then we say, okay, well, are there multiple names? We should probably pick one. So we can just sort of, and this is standardization. Like every language goes through this, right? Like what are we gonna call that thing? And sometimes it's exciting. Like I know who the first person was, perhaps, at least through social media, that I could see, to name that little baby Yoda. And someone say Yoda Yeti, and I'm like, they were the first one. I should have said it first. I was also happy for them. I would probably go with núkts myself, just because it seems to be what folks are using. But then sometimes, as we sort of go through this, sometimes we got to figure out, okay, do we need a different word for this thing than that thing? Especially as we go from not using our language on the regular to using it on the regular, right? Then we've got to sort of come up with some standards.
So in that whole process, do people usually, like for things that aren't even from, I guess kind of like milk, kind of it's something kind of more introduced, or cow's milk. Like if somebody were to bring in croissants or something, would we come up with a different word for that typically? Or would we have just use the French name for it because it's a French thing?
That's a good question. I think, yeah, it might depend on the thing.
Because there's like garlic bread and pop.
Yeah, so that's kat'óotʼ, and then saltines are ʼaayí, board crackers, like a wooden board.
Like how common it was maybe that
Right.
it was here? Like if something is like, whoa, you only find this in this like little town in whatever country, and then for some reason somebody had it here, we just call it by that name.
Well, a good example would be
Oh.
in the language nest, right?
Uh-huh.
So we don't want to be saying watermelon, cantaloupe, pineapple, but they're eating all those things. So we're going to call that. So we just come up with something. So watermelon had a name. It's kat'óotʼ, which is a buoy berry, which is pretty fun.
Oh.
And then we're sitting there. I was just thinking about a pineapple. So sometimes I'll look up, like, what's it called in Hawaiian? And it's like really long. I'm like, So So I said we should call pineapple dasuni tlek, which would be a fruit with a bark on it. And then we had cantaloupe the next day. I was like, what about hóoch'i tlek? And I'll have to run that by some speakers. It's like canvas berry. Because if you look at the outside, it looks like a canvas, right? So sometimes you go like, well, what does this look like? Does it resemble something that we have? Like celery, it's called ʼaayí. Wild celery.
Or
Yeah.
grape.
With that
White
sometimes.
person's berry. Oh.
And that's how, but then we also encounter things. So what are the two words for soy sauce? Anybody know them? Chanwan,
Don Juan,
Gunchish. What's the other one? Anybody know? It's an old name. I didn't come up with it. Kushtashukhu.
Right, I think I.
Otter pea. Land otter urine. And where does Chanwan come from? Where's Chanwan come from?
Chinese water.
Yeah, Chanwan comes from Chinaman. Like that is not a good word origin, right? So as we sort of start talking about this, we're like, okay, what are we gonna call this then? Because people, some things are funny, like honey is called bee poop, but maybe we want to revisit that someday. Mayonnaise is tleit I think is what we settled on. But I think we had 3 names for that because we couldn't settle. We're in Sitka and we came up with. I do think I would like to propose for ranch dressing washdan kwan echi. Oil. American oil. Only because I just heard somewhere that when you go to other countries, a lot of places call ranch dressing American dressing.
You know it was invented in Alaska?
Really?
Ranch, yeah.
Anaski echi. Okay, no, we're not going to claim it. We're not going to claim it. I won't allow. Okay. But when we come up with new names for things too, like so we're moving towards shoyu, which comes from shoyu, which comes from Japanese, right? So we'll just adopt a word from another language, and these conversations are also going on with words like tleit ʼka, chanwan. Like it's better to just go like right to someone's ethnic origin, but we also do get into some conversations about what people did when they came here, and so it's a big, complicated part of the language. But it's exciting because we have a living language. We're coming up with these words, we're figuring out what to say so that the biggest thing for us at the nest is that the kids know what we're talking about when we say it. And then we just start using that. But we do have these discussions in classes. Like someone's like, what we can call video games? It's like, okay, we'll probably come up with something. He's like, what we call PlayStation? I was like, just stop. Like we don't have to do all the brand names and everything, So sometimes there is a stopping point. And so, but maybe we come up with, because then we can look at, well, where does croissant come from and what does it mean and how is it used and do we want to adopt something new for that? Or you just say, disyedi sakne, looks like a crescent-shaped bread. Disyedi is the little crescent moon. Okay.
ʼaduwóosʼ is a very descriptive word that, came from something totally different that, doesn't, it's not using the word, the English word, that just kind of.
Yeah, and we have
very descriptive.
kat'óotʼ and aadát ḥanehiki'at. That one is also called ch'ak cool name. It's like an eagle claw. How cool of food is that?
Okay.
And there's an old word for butter, which is ch'ak, eagle fat. And also, I do think we ate them now and then. Long time ago. Don't judge us. Okay.
A question about months.
Oh.
So I know it's insane, but on the Huna Foundation's calendar, they have it as I think Shema. This.
I think that's December. Sha Nachdis. So sometimes there are little mix-ups, but then there are also different names for the months in different places. Like that's an absolute thing. If you look in the noun, there's a huge noun list from Jeff Lear, which I think you could find right here, right? So here's an Excel sheet, here's a number sheet. It's got every noun that he could record whenever he did this. And that's more nouns than any single source anywhere. You do have a lot of repetition in these lists. I'll show you folks what it looks like. It's good to know that these resources exist so that as you're the intermediate learners, you're the ones who are going to be taking deep dives into things. So if you can't find a word for something, you can go look in here. So this is what it looks like. So you have a number over here. Then you have let's see, day one na or day one ya, off the path, or day ḳayah, the side of the path. This would be side of the road, like what do they call it? What do they call that? You get in the kind of the ditch a little bit. What's that called in English?
The shoulder.
Shoulder. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Sheesh. So then you do have some stuff in terms of like going way up to the top of this list. So here's Tlingit. Here's, I also don't think this one, oh, let's go to here. Sorry. So it's alphabetized. So like there's a name for it. I don't know. So you get like but this it doesn't alphabetize everything, right? So this type of program is a spreadsheet, right? So it's not made to differentiate between the tone vowels. I don't know if it does. Maybe it does, but I know it doesn't differentiate between underlying characters. But if you have dictionary software, you can program it to do that. But then you go over, and this is usually what we call a translation equivalent, which means a single word that tells you kind of what that thing is, which is a little tricky because sometimes finger will be under hand, right? Or sometimes fingernail will be under finger. And then you have the definition. So the definition is like, what you're trying to do here is like, what's the one word you could look up in English to go find that thing? Volcano is yachiksha, in case you're wondering. And then it has over here some information. So if we go down, it says, well, let me try and find one that has, so here it gives you like salmonberry has multiple names, right? So then it says anach kleik klak tenk wask an kleiku. And then it has here, like here's on dot kanahik, because it's super hyperactive on the ship. Because the first one that Trinket ever saw was probably on a big boat. And the word on is village, big boat, or land. So then it has some notes in here, and it tells you also who gave information about these words. If you get to like monkey or something like that, it does give the scientific name for it. So it's a great resource. And so I'm currently pulling stuff from here into the dictionary I'm working on just to have like a more user-friendly interface is all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to steal anybody's work, despite what some people are saying. Okay. On that note, let's do a couple of these. Okay. Let's get back into this. Did we do this one yet? Okay. Somebody read.
Take away.
Sheesh. And how would you translate that? Your, yeah.
Child.
There's a child. There's a de right before the child.
Their child.
Their child. Anybody can help out with aught? Paternal aunt. Your paternal aunt. Their child. What about ashat?
Holding.
Holding, right? holding, grabbing. It could be imprisoning under the right situations, but ashat is to grab or to hold. And then that gets us to ʼaduwóosʼ. Is that, okay? So all combined, we do have a question here. We got all the parts, right? So it's like in Hawaii, they say it's he'e, na'o. A sentence is like an octopus. It's got these little parts that are the tentacles and they can move around. That's the case here. I'at is one thing. Du yadi is another thing. Ashat is a third thing. You can move them around. For Tlingit, like when you get into advanced Tlingit, you'll find sometimes you have to do some things if you do that.
Is that your holding your her child?
Yeah, so wherever the ge pops up immediately after what we're asking. Is that your paternal auntie holding their child? Right? In this case, you could probably say her child, right? So what if I say, is that your auntie's child she's holding?
After the yeti, you would
Right? I'at, do you get the ashat? Where you just put this where you're asked, where you're asking the thing, right? And so, and then you could say, I'at, do you get the ashatakwe? Is she holding the child, right? And so English does this differently than Tlingit, but Tlingit, it's like that's what the question is asking, right? It's a roaming sort of a thing. And there are certain constructions where it does want to go a certain way, right? I'itke uwaha. Is it your turn? I'itke yan uwaha. Like that's where that one wants to go. Take tlog away.
No. My maternal aunt is.
Yes. So then the answer comes back and says, no, that's my maternal. It's on my mother's side. Someone else. Okay. Cheesh. What do you recognize?
My son, their love their sister.
Yes. And what does the awe do?
Doesn't mean that that's like what the sentence is about.
It was that is my son. That's what it's doing.
Yeah.
That is my son. He loves his sister. Yeah. Okay. So what do we got here? Everybody repeat after me. Chasachan.
Asachan.
Isachan.
Isachan.
Asachan.
Asachan.
Tusachan.
Tisachan.
Yisachan.
Yisachan.
Hasasachan.
Hasachan.
Dudzachan.
Tisachan.
What did we just do?
I love myself.
Oh, wait.
We conjugated the.
Yeah. So we are changing the subject, the one who does the verb. And so how would I interpret chasachan? All of the objects will be them. These are all a single third person them. Just to give you a major hint, we'll only change.
They love me.
Well, I'm the lover here. I'm the lover.
Oh, you love me.
Well, I
Love them.
love them. Or it. But this should not be inanimate things like a lamp. What about isachan?
I love it. I love.
Okay, so
You love them.
Oh, that's you. Yeah.
cha is I. No cha, I ain't doing it. There's gotta be ch or cha in there for me to be doing it.
You love them.
You love them. Yeah, okay. Asachan. Could be. It could also be they love them. Tusechan. Some people have little cheat cards. That's great. Use it. Use the card. I will show you where to get this information. Let's pause. Yes, this is we. Tusechan. There's going to be a pattern to predict here. Yisechan.
You all.
Y'all love them.
Y'all love them. Asechan.
They all love them.
Yes. Now this one, I just translated it like that. Tlingit has a couple of vague points, just a couple. And here is one of them. This is actually one of them as well. This could be you love them, they love you. You actually cannot tell. You have to do some work outside if you need to specify. Same with this one. This could be they love them all, they all love them, they all love them all. You cannot tell the difference. What about didzechan? It is the fourth person.
Somebody.
They are loved or people love them. They are both perfectly fine translations. There are times in my mind where it sounds better to just say, it happened. So you could say, like for example, if I say, ʼaduwóosʼ, I would usually say, people ate. But if I say, ʼaduwóosʼ, I would say, it was eaten. So it kind of depends, I think, on what the object is doing. We'll get to that later. Now we're just sort of, the reason for doing this is saying, oh, look at that. ḳ, nothing. ʻy, nothing. ʼd. That's what's going on in the subject. There are fewer subjects than objects. The subject does the verb. This is the doer. It's important. Wait, who loves who? I gotta get my gossip on. So I walked into a meeting today just to say hi, and someone's like, what's the gossip? And I was like, oh man, I think I just gave a speech today about talking nice. And then I was like, well, let me say this. Okay. Just for fun, now we're gonna lock up the subject. This is all gonna be they. We're gonna follow the same pattern, but now we're gonna change the object. So if we go from chasechan to chatsechan, what do you think just happened? Say it again.
They love me.
They love me. Oh, okay. Every one of these is going to start with they. Let me just give you a major hint. We're just doing a guided walk through this kind of stuff. We don't expect you to, there's no test, there's no exam, there's no nothing. Sechan, in this case.
You.
They love you. Asechan.
They love them? No.
Ye'oweh, ye'oweh. Ha-sechan.
They love us.
Love us. Yisechan.
They love y'all.
They love y'all. Hasasechan.
They love them all.
Yeah, we'll just say they all love them. Whatever, they all love them all. It's, everybody loves everybody. It's all good. Kusechan.
Isn't that just to love?
Yeah, that's your word of the week video.
Your love?
Kusachan with an A in that classifier is the noun love. Kusechan with the I is they
With love?
love people. We do have fourth person pronouns. We will learn how they work. This is just saying, hey, look at that. This little boy loves his. I don't know if anybody watched Game of Thrones, but if you put those two brothers and sisters, it's a really different sentence. Okay.
Click.
I had to do it. I had to.
You notice that he has two eyes on one side?
What's
I
that?
think it's his eyebrow. Is it
Oh,
his
really?
eyebrow or is it two eyes?
Oh, it is. Chach, he's a halibut boy. Okay. I do think it's supposed to be like an eyebrow. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I've got a question about the them, it, you said not the lamp though. So is it, it's not in reference to not living things? So is it like the person or the animal?
Yeah, and I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. But I don't think this works particularly well for like, I love our culture, or like, I love donuts, or I love. Never would try and get elders to translate stuff like that. They would change it,
Okay.
and they would first like, I love coffee. They just say ʼaduwóosʼ. But it just comes down to like culturally, cultures don't always communicate the same things. Like another thing is like my best friend. People would always ask, how do I say like my best friend? I was like, well, you kind of don't. I mean, I guess you could say like I like this person the most. But like these, English does like ranking things, and it also likes, and it does talk about your love of things. But I do think because this means to be next to something, and usually it means to visit something. Like when you say, achani nagu, come be by me. That's the same thing as this verb root right here, which is khan. And it means to be with someone. And that's why you say achana for my significant other. So because of that, I don't think it works particularly well for abstract concepts or things. That just means we got to find another way to say those things. Right?
Yeah. So what is the it? Because this is them / it.
Well, yeah, that would be them probably all the time, but it could be like, it works for a dog.
Okay.
But if your dog is a he or she or them and not an it, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
My dog's a it when it eats the butter, but then she's usually a she if she's not eating my butter.
Just like a whole stick of butter?
Like a whole, yeah. Like I come home and she doesn't come to say hi, so I'm like, she's all like shame, hi, and then I find this butter wrapper.
You should.
She gets it off the counter because she's tall enough to do that.
I hear it's a regular occurrence too.
It is butter eater.
I know of someone that dips butter in a sugar bowl and then just eats the butter with the sugar dipped on it, because it's like a couple of steps away from cookie dough.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, you need another ingredient or two for cookie dough, but basically you take those other ingredients out, they look like flour, I think is the only thing.
I mean, when I'm whisking them together, sometimes I'll take a little spoonful of it.
And then
I
so
think
they
that's
just dip
required.
They just
Yeah.
dip a thing in and the sugar, and then just like, it's like a snack. I'm like, oh my God. It is
The
not
whole stick.
One more, then we'll take a break. Somebody read this.
ʼaduwóosʼ.
And how would you translate this? Yeah, who are they?
They are my relatives.
They are my relatives or my friends. Yuck. Ach keitli dutuasagu chak echi. Yeah, well. Tashishke kate. Reduced to it status. Okay. Take 5. We'll come back. We'll do some more questions. And we'll go back to the beginning Tlingit workbook. We're on path to get to how jinéiyi yuchatangi. But the idea is like just continuing to build a whole bunch of stuff until we get to there. And then we start looking at things a little bit differently. And that's the part where I'm probably going to need some ideas and thoughts on how to come up with activities to help put this stuff in your mind. Because a lot of stuff that we do, all these slideshows, well, like, the little readings in Tlingit, I don't really put the translations up there so that we can walk through the whole thing. So don't go look for it because you'll ruin it. Because I want us to sort of use it to keep building our ability to translate sentences and then keep building up our ability to make those sentences on our own so that we can get off of the books. That's always the goal, is to get off of the books, but I do think it takes a lot of work to get there. Okay. Take 5. Come back.
I was hanging out with some hideouts down south, and they.
Okay, so back to questions. So I think we did a wasa question. We did a dasa question. So now we're going to do a da'asa question. So what type of question is this asking?
What group?
Which one? So it's which of a set. So we had dasa, a what question, wasa, a how question. But keep in mind, Tlingit has a few questions that would be what questions in English, like wasa atbune, what happened? But that's a wasa question. Wasa ʼaduwóosʼ, how do people call you, or what is your name, right? So here's an example. I say, daqasa khan yahyati. Daqasa khan yahyati. So which one is red, right? And so here again, here's the verb root in red. Here's the verb, in orange. And then here's the verb phrase. So you cannot separate an yach from yati without completely changing the meaning. So that's why we say verb phrase. Like that's the parts that you have to know. Because you could change khan to different nouns to get different colors. Can anybody think of a different da'asa type of question? Yeah, we had that one. Da'nachsa isiti. Which moiety are you? Da'kwan, right? And you can also, like let's say we had, I had these different cups, right? These 2 cups. I could say, Da'k guch'a sawe ituasagu. Which cup do you want? So this can be a noun, right?
Could it be like, which brother of mine do you want to?
Oh yeah. Well, that one you'd probably have to, because you couldn't really just say eek, because it wouldn't make sense. You could say da'kha sawe ituasagu. Which person do you want? Or you could say da'k'asa eek ituasagu. That's when you'd have to bounce out.
So since the sa is in there, does that mean like you're really asking for the person to voice that answer? Isn't that right? So I mean, technically that's the way. So if you were to say that question and you had these things here and somebody just said, you know, if they asked a question and they just pointed to it or whatever without voicing the answer, is that not right maybe?
The second edition of the workbook is coming out. Y'all are getting a copy for free, thanks to Sealaska Heritage Institute. It's not free, they're buying it for us, right? And it is available, and I think it has probably a better description of what sa is, thanks to Jeff Lear, who pointed it out. Sa is a verb, which means it's a command form for name it. So it's saying name which one, name what, name how. But again, like a lot of things in Tlingit, when we pull all the pieces apart, they help us understand how it works. But when you put it back together, go back to the meaning of the thing, right? Like for example, like wasa atbune, how did it happen? But it's actually like what happened, right?
So if you were to say name it, and somebody just pointed at it, would that answer of pointing at it not work?
Well,
If they didn't actually name it?
Well,
Or
like,
they
so,
named it by pointing at it, maybe. Does that make sense to the question, I guess? I mean, like if I had a bunch of colored things here, and you said, which one is red? And I just pointed to it without naming it.
I wonder if that's a cool.
Or is there another question for like if you just wanted somebody to point to the one that's red, or show me the one that's red, versus like which one is red?
oh, for like a non-verbal answer. Like if you said,
nonverbal, yeah, nonverbal answer.
yeah, you could say, wait, that one. That works as well. So a lot of times in language learning, when we're doing a bunch of question and answer stuff, it's often pretty artificial, right? So for example, where are you going? I'm going to Huna. So it's always like these really stretched out things. And every language teacher in the world probably writes their dialogue exercises this way because you're building whole language. And then once you build whole language, then it starts to naturalize. Where are you going? Huna. Right? Because people just talk in very shortened ways because it's all about conveying the information, right? And so we do that with Tlingit as well. So if we say dakhasa khanyakhyati, waita khanyakhyati is probably how we would have it written in the teaching manuals, right? We say waita, or you could just hold it up, right? You could do that.
One of my language teachers, who is an elder, was very insistent with us being different ages that we respond verbally. Versus, and she would have lots of youth that kind of, she was like, this is a Trinket class, not a youth class, I need you to say today.
Oh, so raising the eyebrows.
And she was very insistent about it. I wonder if that's also a cultural thing.
Could be. And I know pointing is there a question? I also know pointing is a thing, but this is also called your pointer. So I don't know. And this is called the pointer on the outside. So I think we probably didn't point at people very much, but we certainly pointed at things. Okay. Adusa. What kind of question is it?
Who?
Yeah, it's a who question.
Who out there? Who out there?
Kat'óotʼ sisk. Yeah, waka. Who? Lingít sisk ḳu.aa. Adu. There you go. So, adusa kakisha. Who are you going to marry? Kind of an evasive question, but it's just sort of showing examples with different verbs in different modes. So this is a future. You'll learn how to spot these. Like, hey, that looks like a future to me. And then you're going to learn how to put them together. So that once you know a verb, you're like, oh, I got to put it in the future. I got to put it in perfective, right? So sha is the verb root, to marry. Gaqi is the verb itself. So that's actually the prefix. So when we build this stuff up later, we're going to bust this into a bunch of different colors, right? And so you're going to have different colors for the object, the thematic, the conjugation, the subject, the classifier, the root, or the stem. But for now, we're just going to say, look at this part. There's the verb. Can you think of another adusa type of question?
Is that the adu the same as adu siksoe?
Adu seeks away. Yeah. Whose daughter is that? Right. So you see, another example of how things can pop in between the question marker and the sa. Yeah, adusa isechan. Who do you love? Right? Sounds like a good like song, right? So like, yeah. So adusa. You can also say. So how is aduchsa different? Anybody know? Anybody heard it? The ch on a verb is habitual, to say like always. The ch on a noun is different.
Maybe it's called ergative, so like who.
Yes. So if you need to specify like who did the thing, that's what the ch does. And you could put it onto nouns. Yelch, wucha, raven ate it. So aduchsa, wucha, who ate it. So if you need to specify, so that's the difference here. It's always adusa, unless you're saying specifically who did the verb. Then that ch pops on there. Aduchsa, wucha. Okay. Gudesa. Gudesa.
Where,
Where? And it's got a little bit of extra stuff on there.
what direction, where towards?
Towards where?
Yeah, towards where. Yep.
Or in slightly old-fashioned English, you could say whither.
Oh, whether.
That's what that means. We've lost it.
Whither is towards.
It's good day, yeah. And whence is where from.
Oh.
And where is actually where at. But yeah, we've kind of muddled that in the last couple hundred years.
What was the first one?
Whither.
Whither you came. Could you say that? How would you say it in a sentence?
Oh,
Whither thou goest.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lady Macbeth.
Or,
yeah.
Yeah.
Geesh, okay. Okay, so for Tlingit, gu likes to have a suffix. It likes to have one, de, dach, nach, t, so, right? And we will go through these suffixes and practice them. For now, like the really good starting point, like there's something in your hand, like a little house, and you go de, dach, de, dach, de, dach, de, dach. The two most common ones, to and away from. What was the one? Whence? Whither, whence. Okay. We're bringing it back. Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff going on with this one that I want to sort of highlight just so we can start thinking about this stuff as we continue to sort of build, like we want to be able to say like going towards, but then there's different ways to go towards, right? So here you have gudesa yanikuch. Gudesa yanikuch. Gudesa yanikuch.
Gudesa yani.
So that's going by boat or by car. How would you say walking? Anybody know? Gudesa yanikut. Gudesa yanikut. And then you can have gudesa yakunitin. It's just generally traveling. Where are you traveling to? There's no, because sometimes for Tlingit, you gotta say by boat, by car, flying. This is just generally going. Okay. What about kudesa yanishich?
Running.
Where are you running to? Right? So we got shich, we got koch, we got gut. Okay.
Sometimes isn't the running like X by X?
If you are from Yucatan, you would say kudesa yanishich. All other places, that front of the verb does get absorbed. And this is going to happen, this kind of stuff. So So here's gudesa, yani good. And then we could, oh, don't go that way.
Wait, so is the SH the classifier in that one?
Yes. So then you could say, what do you think that one's doing? Gudesa wu good.
Where did they go?
Yeah, where did they go? Right? Well, I guess ye good would be. So, you
Janae,
can, oh, go ahead.
sorry, would a proper response be the place and then de?
Yeah, so it depends. Like if you want to do this whole language type of answer, like so you could say gudesa, yani good. So now I could say, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go home. Going home.
Next de.
Ne, de. Get rid of the sa because there's no question now. Yan, hakut. Right. So okay, everybody. Gudesa, yani good.
Good. Yani good.
Nechte yan hakut.
Hey, Jan. Good.
So change this to you. Gudesa, ye good.
You
Where'd you go? So now we're gonna say nechte. Oops. Nechte good. Nechte good.
good.
Now what do you think this last one is doing? Gudesa good.
Where will you?
Where are you gonna go? So then we're gonna change this one again to ne. Get rid of sa. And we'll go k, kwa. Nechte good. So I brought this up because there's this other thing that happens. It's gonna get a little crowded. Okay. So if I wanted to say nesh, I'm just let me start. Okay. Let me go smaller. Okay. Smaller now. I'm not saying sa, but what I want to say is go home. But even though I don't go home yet, I'm just saying if I want to say nechte.
All right. So let's listen to this is going to be a talk by the lady who wrote the Bering Sea, Bering Strait book.
Nechte naku. Nechte naku. Nechte naku. There's a set of verbs where in the command form the end falls off. It's really interesting because like a lot of us know how to say qanu. So what is qanu? Sit down. So we've got qanu. Right, let me make a whole new thing. Sit down.
Singular.
For a single person. How would I say they sat down? Anybody know that one?
How do you say what? I couldn't hear.
They sat down. Woo, nu, wunuk. Another example of the end falls off the verb. So this, like, as we sort of keep learning more and more language, we what we end up doing is we build up a whole bunch of stuff. This is how this thing works. This is how this thing works. This is what this thing does. Here's all this vocabulary. I'm getting this name, this verb, that verb, that verb. Then we start to figure out like the patterns and these exceptions. It's like, oh yeah, it's like this. Aadáx, this one, right? So these are some things that do happen. And that shich made me think of it. Because if you look it up, you're going to look up he. But you would say woo he, or would you he, sorry. You'd say would you he. So that X would pop back up there. But just going she, a lot of Tlingit is just like, just drop that first X. Everyone knows what you're talking about. Sheesh. Okay. Switching gears. Let's do place names. Bringing them back, putting them back on the land. I do believe all the names for Yakutat come from Iyak. First one, Yakdat. Yakdat. Shachayik. Shachayik. That one's a combination, Iyak and Tlingit. Kashyach. Kashyach. Shqaqwe. Shqaqwe. Tuk-on. Tuk-on. Deshu. Deshu. Khuna. Khuna. Khunaya. Gautak-on. Sheetka. Sheetka. Ak. Tak. Tak. Angun. Angun. Khir. Khir. Chekhuan. Chekhuan. Sitka. Sitka. Kachchanak. Kachchanak. Kitchan. Kitch. Oops, I think there should be a period right there. Sorry. Kitchan. Kitchan. Shawak. Shawak. Shansit. Shansit. I think it might be old age, even though there's a question mark. Tlein. 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 Natasahin. Natasahin. Tlenyaqi. Tlenyaqi. Kudes khe. Kudes khe. Kudes khe. Unachu. Unachu. Okay.
Where's your underline under the L for Tlein?
Because there's also some people say Tlein.
So it's a voice L.
Yes, but there was a bit of an argument about how to write it. And so I wrote it both ways in here. My preference, if you hear a voiced L from a Tlingit speaker and you want to write it, I recommend an N with an underline. Because the speakers who used a voice L use it in the place of an N, very predictably. So that's say uhan for us, they say uhal. So it's just a sound substitution. There's only two speakers I know of who ever did it though, but they did it all the time, even when they spoke English. My great-grandpa's name was Bert Dennis. He said, I'm Bert Dennis. Okay, so the Quan. Tlein.
I'm sorry, did I hear you right? He said Dallas?
Dallas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he'd say there's a place called Tan'ani, and he called it Tul Ali. It's very consistent with it.
I'm sorry, do you feel like that is something, well, I mean, I guess that was practiced more, maybe.
Well, I only know of 2 speakers who did that. And it was sort of where people would say the N sound, they would make an L sound. So it just seemed like a thing that, but it's also a pattern because we've got 2 people who do it, so it is a thing, but I think it was very uncommon. I don't know what to call it either. Just a substitution.
Speech impediment, like
Right.
where I say R, I used to say ow.
Yeah, but I think it's just a thing though. But it's not a dialect because it's an individual thing. So it's just like a substitution. Because, but if you listen to Susie James, who talks very fast, extremely high level fluency speaker, but she'd say for come here, octopus, in the story, she's hakulak, hakulak. It's so cute. I mean, it's just amazing. But it was also just like, though there's some relationship between those 2 sounds for Tlingit, because also anything that has a voiced L, if you make it into a Tlingit word, it'll turn it into an N. So if someone's name was Larry, and we wanted to just Tlingitize that name, we'd say Nawi.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. And there's almost no, I mean, physically, when you feel where your own tongue is, where you say an N and an L, almost no difference, really.
Yeah. Mm. A lot of the groups around us have a voiced L. Haida has a voiced L and an unvoiced L. And so a lot of our songs have voiced L's in them. Like you'll hear people say la and stuff in some of the songs. That means it's a trade song that came in. But they just made that sound. It wasn't, I think the R sound was kind of harder for the older speakers, and the F maybe. There's this really neat part where the sea otter, like Raven, defeats his uncle, Yoqisqoqeq, who becomes the moon. He saves his mother, puts her in this little black duck, and tells her to just float around the world. Then he pokes his nose through the sky and spins around. And he's getting really exhausted and probably bored. So he starts to say, Qajak she kat'óotʼ qaqaskit. Qajak she kat'óotʼ qaqaskit de. Let me fall on Qaja. And then he looks down, there's this little kelp island, so he falls on it. He's like, I just want to take a break, I want to rest. Kat'óotʼ ʼaayí. So he wants to just rest, but then he hears something behind him, panting. So he looks, and it's a sea otter. And when she's telling the story, she goes, Yauch, sea otter. What's that do, Sak? So she says sea otter for sea otter. So her daughter goes, sea otter. She goes, sea och. And then she goes back into her story. So okay.
Susie James, were there more speakers that talked that fast? Like, that's a pretty old recording.
Yeah.
And she lived a while ago. But then I often hear, or very old elders nowadays say that talking fast is an English thing and that we need to slow down.
That's their perspective, but I've got recordings of J.B. Fawcett, and he's very fast. Wow. Susie James was probably the fastest. I do think Frank Italio was pretty fast. Robert Zuboff was very slow, but there's times when he gets excited in his stories and he starts talking real fast. Frank Dick talked pretty fast.
The story.
Which one?
ādáx,
Mm.
the one that you have repeated 4 times in 2 minutes.
Because
Because it's that fast.
she's, yeah, ḳayasat is what they would say. She's a fast talker. Yeah, it's very fun to work on her stuff and also incredibly challenging. Okay, let's do the ḳwán. Tlein ḳwán. ḳwán. Tlein ḳwán. ḳwán. ḥwán. 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 So those are the known ones. There's been a request to add sitka because the people of Petersburg want to be their own. And it was an interesting conversation. Like, how do we do it? I was like, I don't know. Petition the people. Like, I think if they say it, I guess we'd probably just do it. I don't know how they did it a long time ago. But like, all of these are place names. So you attach it to a place name. There's a particular importance to it, usually relating, there's some origin with the people and that place name. There's some relationship there that's very sacred. The couple things that are different with this whole list is there are a couple I think that come from, Tagish comes from Tagish, the Tagish language, right? So it's a different language. That's the people of the Carcross area. And there was a Tlingit village in one part and then the Tagish village on the other part. They were just very close together. But it's pretty much recognized as Tagish land when you go talk to the people who are there. But there's certainly a Tlingit village. And then ḥwán, they refer to themselves as ḳ'aduwóosʼ because their origin place is Glacier Bay. And they would like to go back there. Somebody put a national park there.
Right. It's too cold.
So then this chapter has an introduction template, which is just saying, here's one way you could say it. It's not saying this is the only way, this is the prescribed way, this is the preferred way. It's not saying any of those things. And it's kind of divided into these sections. You could pick one. Some people like to say ādúwóosʼ. Some people like to say aayí. There's also, this tries to streamline it. So like, once you start talking about yourself, people already know that. So you don't have to keep saying me, right? Yeah, so if I just say, and sometimes you don't have to repeat the verb. So if I said, Lance Twitchell, it makes sense, right? You don't have to say ādúwóosʼ, right?
Could you do like with the same with aadáx, tlingit?
Yep. And you haven't even used a verb yet. Right? And I see a hand up. Wasawi.
Have you heard Gooskikwan or
Yes. Gooskikwan is the original name given to the Russians who came over. It means people at the base of the clouds.
So have you heard people use that in place of Tlingit? So Gooskikwan, Would that be appropriate, or would you just be saying like your Russian name?
I think it's fine. I think it's something we can all talk about too. Just gotta make sure you go goots. You gotta get the goots, gotta get the ke and the kwan. Because I have heard people stand up and introduce themselves and say goose kwan. And we're like, whoa, hold on a second. There are people saying the people of the vagina, and we need to make sure it's saying goots ke kwan. So I would say it's fine. As long as we're really working on proper pronunciation, or we're letting, because there'll be some wide eyes in the room where I was like, what are we talking about? But yeah, so I think those are good conversations to be had.
I guess for all of that fun.
And like Washdown Kwan, people of Boston.
I was like, we all came out of fun. It's just
It's a place name though. It's like okay. So going down, we have this is usually a clan or an ethnicity. So you could say Inupiaq Khatsati. If you're speaking Tlingit, you could say Lakota Khatsati, German Khatsati. And then there's debates like, well, should you say like, how do you say I'm German in German? I was like, I don't know. Like, if people are going to understand, and you can always translate later. And whenever you're introducing yourself, I say, one, this isn't something you always do in public. Like if I'm speaking in public, if I'm invited to go somewhere, I should just say, then I just get right to the thing. But if I'm invited to Klukwan and I'm being asked to talk about the killer whale fin house for some reason, I would give the longer thing and I would get to like, that's my grandparents' people. Because then I need to give say like, that's why I'm talking about them. And they asked me to come here and tell this story or whatever the thing is. So if you need to tie yourself to people publicly, then you get the longer introduction. But then these things are here as well in the course of conversation. These types of things might come up. So here, like if your clan was Kagwantan Khatsati. And I have, when it comes to the clans, there's a big list of clans in here. And I have one request. Don't put an S on the clan. Like the Tlukach'adis are here, and the Kagwantans, and the Daklawadis. It happens, people do it. I cannot stop anybody from doing it. But it always it's like the nails on the chalkboard. That's my nails on the chalkboard thing. So when people put the S or the Z, it's usually a Z because most of them end with a vowel. Right? Okay. Here you'd say Chatzati, Uchna, Chakna, Yeshna, Yadi, Dachchan, Aya'achdakanuchu. So this is your father's people. Optional. Dad left. Something weird happened. You don't have to do this in front of anybody. You also don't have to do this in a class. Do what you're comfortable with. Dachchan is usually your father's clan or your mother's father's clan. Because you're already a yadi of your father's clan. You're already your own clan. Aya'achdakanuchu. This is your mother's father's clan. Ayahanakahiti. You could also say hit ye dach from inside this house. That's a pretty cool way to say it. So you say gao hit ye dach. Kuchzati is where I was born. Yechatyati is where I'm staying. And kucha'u is where I live. So now this starts to sort of move, right? So even when you learn this in beginning Tlingit, we were changing this pronoun on you, this object pronoun, which we're going to do a lot more deliberately. So you say, I'm good, you're good, they're good, we're good, y'all are good, they all are good, people are good. You're going to start doing that stuff. But now it's like, we were tricking you into doing this object pronoun already. So we see chat and I. And then we see duh. And what's the duh? People, right? That's that fourth person. People call me. People call you. Wasakhat duwasak. You duwasak. Nakhsa isati. Whoops, this one was me. Nakhsa khatsati. So like whenever I do this chapter, I'm like, why would someone say that? Well, I guess if they're asking, if they speak Tlingit and don't know, and we're asking their parent to confirm, or
to tease someone when they guess the wrong plan.
oh yeah, right? Or flirting or whatever. I don't know. Could be what clan am I, right? There was one elder, she liked to flirt with me and she'd say, ʼaduwóosʼ. That's like, or if when I retire and I write Tlingit soap operas and someone's gonna get like a head injury and they wake up like, so then you'd say the clan, and then so you could say so that's what this, so we're going to speed through this, right? So you're going kat'óotʼ. That's the whole mechanics behind this, right? And then you go to, you end up with third person. Uh-oh, which isn't that one. Dang it, there's always, okay. One in every chapter I could live with. It's already in print, it's too late, okay? But the idea here is like, could you introduce another person? Like talking to them, right? Could you introduce a third person? Which is culturally probably a lot more appropriate. This person's visiting our community, let me tell you who they are. So that when they get up here, they just start talking about a thing. Then we get into the plural forms of these pronouns that we did. So we did kat'óotʼ, ʼaayí, uhan, yuhan, has, aayí, hasdu. So starting to build these, expand into, we start with 3, go to 6. There are a few more than that, but this is just where we start. It's like we just sort of pull back the curtain, say, look at these things. Like when I was learning Hawaiian, they said, this is how you say mine. I was like, okay, I got it. And these others, like Hawaiian, they spoke Hawaiian. They said, oh, you learn Hawaiian? I was like, yeah. Like, did they teach you there's like 3 different ways to say my? I was like, no. They said, because you've got 3 belly buttons and it depends which ones it's attached to. It's like, what? That's amazing. But they didn't tell us that while they're teaching it to us, right? Because you don't want to overwhelm people. So there's more pronouns than this. But these are, we say, look at these 3. Look at these 3. Now you got 6. Then we're going to add some more. Okay? And then it gets into like what happens in the verbs. So you could say, ʼlukachati, ʼaduwóosʼ. We are called ʼlukachati, right? Or whatever you are. You could be Pearl Jam, ʼaduwóosʼ, right? Or whatever the thing is, right? And then we got a big list of clans. We're out of time, but I will say, check out this list. It's organized by these migrations. It's continually changing as I continue to understand how all of this stuff works. I'm not trying to tell anybody where they're from, who they are, but I am trying to figure out like how it all connects so that we could talk about that kind of stuff. Clans are born out of these migrations. Nobody's better than anybody else. Nobody's anybody's slave. There's all kinds of like weird stuff I hear, but I do think you have these common migrations, which I've just called like the killer whale migration, the ʻaayí migration. And then even though it says like primary crest and secondary, that just means what are you most likely to see? And when you get into a secondary crest, sometimes that means, yes, they use a dragonfly, but it's actually only the guys from this area, right? And then it's broken into quan, in which, what are the known houses? It doesn't have everything. There's probably whole clans that are gone now that aren't on this list. But as I saw this list in various forms over the years, I've had lots of conversations and lots of research to try and figure out like how do all the pieces fit. so that folks can just find themselves and find their relatives and keep a closer track on how all that stuff works. And then next week we will close out this and move on to weather. And we'll close it with some nouns.
If people are interested in hearing the Huna migration story, it was recorded today during the lunchtime Trinket language course with Shaksaniki and Nishitoga. And it'll be posted. It was the shortened version, and she was very kind to share it. And it will be posted either tonight or tomorrow morning on the Trinket and Haida YouTube page.
Sheesh. And yeah, so Tlingit Haida has classes going. I think kat'óotʼ and Aware are going to start having a weekly class going. We have the other thing I talked about at the beginning, which I didn't translate. We have this thing called Basecamp, which I'm hoping you all will check out. I put the link in the chat, which I will do again. And what it is it's technology for us to stay in touch with each other. I'm trying to multitask, I'm not. It's just this banu, okay, didn't do that right.
Please also put it on the notes.
Oh yeah.
Wait, you put
Well, I post the chat, so you'll be able to find it. I don't want this to be like super public. I'd rather it be something you can go look for, just so we don't get spammed. But if you click on there, you can add yourself to it. And what it is, it's a way for us to stay in touch with each other, ask questions. I'll post reminders and assignments in there. And then we also have a separate Zoom link that's not this one we use for the classes, which we can use to set up study sessions, conversation times. We could connect you folks with the advanced learners, the beginning learners, and just trying to sort of get a little bit more coordination with how we talk to each other and chances to work together in between classes. So check it out, goof around with it, and we'll see how it works. We'll pick it up. We'll talk about it a little bit on Monday. So Monday's Super Smash class, Lateral Kindness workshop. Then we have class on Tuesday, but no class next week on Thursday. Good cheesh.
Good sheesh.
Tlein gunas cheesh.
Kecha.
Cheesh.
How do I say
cheesh suye qasatin.
Hóoch'i.